what we're used to with PowerPoint or Keynote. It adds a more interesting, dynamic lecture. Bento. Bento is a database program or database app on your iPad. This allows you to create your own personal databases. So what sort of databases would you want to create? Well, as a lecturer, we all attend meetings, a lot of meetings. What I do, I use Bento to capture the content from that meeting. So I made this Bento database myself. It's quite easy to do. What you can see here is that I record all the information necessary, like the date, the time, the notes, the action items from that meeting. But quite often in these meetings we use a whiteboard to brainstorm. So I brainstorm some ideas on the whiteboard. I then use my iPad to capture an image of that whiteboard, which drops it into a graphics field in Bento. If I tap on that graphic there, it would open up full screen. So it's a way of having documents or recording meetings or even information about a student, those students who are at risk. You can have it create a database for their details, how they're performing. That database resides on your iPad. You can export that database as a CSV file to your PC as well. So that's Bento. Then there's software which is like audience response software, where students can use their smartphone or their iPad to answer a question that you pose. By asking questions to the audience, you overcome the embarrassment of students who don't want to put their hand up because they feel embarrassed. No one wants to speak in a lecture environment. But they don't mind on their phone or their iPad tapping away their answers to that question. So it can be a multi-choice question. You can put images there if you like. And then as a lecturer on my iPad, I will see the results from my students. I'll see how many students out of a class got the correct answer for that question. If I notice that a lot of students are not getting the correct answer, then obviously what I've been teaching them hasn't worked. I need to rephrase, I need to show more images of that particular situation. So it gives you a chance to do a poll by having a question out to the audience and then reacting to the response and changing your lecture on the fly. You can then stop and spend more time on that particular issue that you're talking about. So PollDaddy and ResponseWare, they're similar types of software, allows you to create these polls, these surveys for use on the iPad.
So what I thought I would show you here is a before and after that relates to handouts. So when we give lectures, or in the past when I've given lectures, I actually don't use PowerPoint. I've used Apple's Keynote program for a long time, but those of you who use PowerPoint or even Keynote, often you will put up a lecture online for students to download, and the lecture handout will look something like this. You know, it might be 4 slides on a page, there's lots of text, there really isn't anything interactive about this, it's pretty much just something for the students to read. So this is what my online resources look like before the iPad. They were basically just handouts. But over the past year, I've actually been using some software called Storyline and an app called Articulate Player to create some really engaging online learning materials for students. I'll demo this entire thing tomorrow, but this is an example of what students can do online now. I've created a series of short 10, 15-minute interactive presentations. Students have to tap on various buttons like each of these buttons, which will then bring up information on functions of the skeleton. You can't hear it, but there is audio. I'm actually speaking in some of these slides. There's video embedded in as well, but it's engaging. Students can't just sit back and fall asleep. They actually have to tap on things and interact with the presentations. This is much more engaging and immersive and entertaining than a plain handout, you know, with 4 slides on a page. One of the great things, and I probably will move on because I will show this to you tomorrow in more detail. I'll actually run through a class on this. But there are also quizzes and a variety of other things that you can do here. So that's the Articulate Player app. Actually, this is the quiz. And it's personalised. The software remembers your name. So if you say your name is Sam, it will say, "Hello, Sam. Here is a question." If you get the question right, then Mario is very happy. If you get the question wrong, then Mario is very sad and starts to cry and asks you to do it again. But it's engaging, it's interactive. So next we will look at the course coordinator. Ooh, this is Bento again. So we've talked already about Bento and Dropbox.
Let me just add to that. This is a database I created for my tutors as well, for students at risk. So I've asked them to keep an eye on students, and if they feel as though a student, because I've got such a large cohort of 670 students, I don't know them all, you know, individually. So they fill in this database that's in their tute groups. If a student is away, not turning up, not actually engaging the content online, we have a lot of content online in our courses. We can monitor if a student is accessing that content. Then they can mark this as student at risk. So then that file is sent to me. I get it all together in one database. I can do a filter or a search for students at risk, and then I can send an email to those students as course coordinator to come and speak to me about their studies and what we can do to improve their studies. The other area a lot of universities are doing are creating their own app. So this one here is our UniSA app. It has information about the various programs, the facilities, the staff, the buildings, and that's provided on the App Store as a free app, as a free download. Also, when we have our open day, as Adelaide University does as well, both our universities have our own purpose-built app for open day. So the students can come in, they can see maps, they can navigate around the university, they can see what events are happening that day, they can go to the one that's to do with medicine, for example. So that's an area that all universities, or most universities anyway around the world, are doing, starting to build their own purpose apps. You want this? Yeah.
So this slide really is a follow-on from the slide earlier where I said students want to learn 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't want to be told anymore that they have to come in to this is an anatomy museum or a pathology museum, and that the specimen that they need to see for class is only available between 10 and 3 o'clock on Monday and Wednesday. You know, students want to learn anytime, anywhere on this device. Similarly, when it comes to histology, yes, we have a microscope room similar to this. Actually, this room is much nicer than the one we have. It's much bigger. We also use virtual microscopy programs, But again, students have to come to campus, either to the microscope room or to the computer suite that has the virtual histology software on it. They can't actually learn at home or outside on the lawn or in the library about anatomy and pathology and histology. So before, students had to come to class in these museums. Well, with the iPad you can rethink some of this. This student is holding in her hand, her name's Vithya, and she's got in her hand a specimen that shows a peptic ulcer. So it's a stomach and you can see a large ulcer in it. And it relates to a case that the students had to do in class. So students had to normally look at this specimen and answer a few questions about peptic ulcers. Well, what I actually did was turned this specimen into a 3D model. And it was actually relatively easy to do. And I then brought this model into an iBook, and we'll show you how to do this later in the week. And students can actually now view this model. They can zoom around it. They can spin around it. They can zoom in and out. We've done this with a variety of anatomy things, skulls, bones, models. But digitizing them, turning them into 3D models, putting them into an iBook, and then giving the iBook out to students means that students have access to all of this material anywhere, anytime. This is an interactive widget in an iBook which actually helps students to learn about histology of the stomach, and this is also another interactive element in the book to show students the various functions of different regions of the gut. So we will be talking about how to create this interactive content for your classes. We've actually brought some 3D models that we've created on the arm, which you can use in your forearm lab session. And I can explain to you, if you're interested, how you would turn a model into a 3D object that you can actually move in an iBook. So if we think about the administrator, the person who runs the course, and I'll let Tim talk about this.
So we're trying to also move to like a paperless office by using the iPad more so, not with the academics but also the admin staff. And there are a number of apps we can use. So normally when we have meetings, this is what we ran at a table, have a discussion. What I've been using for various groups that I belong to is an app called Trello. So Trello is a bit like a task management app, but it's designed to work with groups that are distant. So I'm working on this is a research group with 3 different universities, and on that project we can create a to-do list, we can create a doing list and a done list. What you can do there is that you can actually have a poll. So say we'd like to go a particular way in a research project, then we can poll the people in that group. Do people agree with this approach? So we don't need to meet face to face. It's all done online. We can also add labels, so different coloured labels for different tasks we're working on. And we can attach documents as well to Trello. So the document for discussion can be a attachment to one of these cards. And once we've finished the doing to done, we can move that card over. So we've got a permanent record of that meeting from an admin perspective. Also, don't forget the use of the email and calendars. You always see iPads in admin meetings because they've got quick access to their mail and got quick access to their calendar so they can plan other meetings. So as we've gone through the tutor, lecturer, course coordinator, administrator, now we're moving on to the clinician. Did you want to have a break at 2:30? Is it an hour and a half break? Or where's the... is there a time you want to have a tea break? Another 15 minutes, okay. So the clinician. Before looking at images on viewing boxes, now we're actually bringing the iPad into the clinical setting. So I'll just tap that. Wait a minute. Ah, thank you. Okay. This is an app that's designed to connect with a hospital database system, so they can bring up patients' images, MRI, CT, nuclear medicine images. They can use these images on their iPad to zoom in, zoom out. They can change the intensity. They can annotate it. They can put on calipers to measure. And what you can see now, this animation there, is that there's a clinician working with a student on their iPad. So they've got images like this of a patient on there, and they're marking various areas and discussing. So very much the iPad is used as a mentoring agent. So with staff to student or student to student. So what we're finding that in our hospitals, they've now got Wi-Fi which our students can access. We can send the student case studies to actually then use those in a hospital environment, speak to the professors, speak to the clinicians that are experts in those fields about that particular case study. So students find this a great value, having that ability to display content to these clinicians. And the iPad is light, small, portable, ideal tool to have in a clinical environment. Let's go. Here's some other apps which clinicians can use as well, and these are all referencing type apps. Medscape, which we will maybe demonstrate later today after the tea break, one of the top downloaded apps in the medical environment. Wolfram Alpha, that acts as like a dictionary that accesses databases. So you can find out, you can type in what particular drug is used for what, whatever sort of data information you like to find, or statistical information, this is the app that provides it. There's drug and medication apps as well. Look up any sort of drug and see its effects on other drugs. We've got illustrated dictionaries, medical dictionaries. There's a whole range of dictionaries. So they go from cheap ones, which is for students, up to more advanced dictionaries with a lot of illustrations. You know, many, many pages in one little dictionary. Then there's Draw MD, and that allows you as a clinician, when you're speaking with a patient, to show what procedure will be performed on them in surgery. So the body part you can select, then you can have in various tools you can drag on top. So if you're trying to explain to a patient where their deep vein thrombosis is in their leg, you can choose the leg image, then from a palette of different pathologies, you can grab a deep vein thrombosis and drag it to the actual vein on the leg where that is occurring. It's a tool you use with patients to describe their pathology or their surgery that they're about to be performed. So we've gone through all those, and now final category is the student. So this is a student before, carrying around heavy books, and they get tattered after a while. I had one student that I saw about a month ago who was involved in a car accident, and because of the damage to her body, she couldn't carry heavy books around like that at university. So therefore she has an iPad. all her textbooks on the iPad. So the weight is a hugely different. She just could not carry that amount of books around university. So more and more students are using the iPad as their main textbook. Here's an example of Pearson. We've got Inkling as well as another publisher that's converted textbooks into interactive iBooks for the iPad. And you can see there's a little movie clip. These are all interactive. You can zoom in, you can highlight, you can actually take notes. A little note will pop up. You can go to a glossary, you can search, you can bookmark, play movies, play sound files, see animations. All that in these textbooks provided by companies like Inkling and E. Pearson. Here's a student taking notes at the moment, and they can save those notes, and they can then jump back to that note for that page. This is further examples of use of the iPad. Remember I was telling you about PDF Expert before, how tutors can use that in their tutorial environment. You saw there that they tapped on a field, the keyboard slid up, and you're able to type in text instead of using your finger to try and write the words in. You can also annotate by adding arrows. Text. So we provide our students with our lecture notes prior to the lecture. They then download those lecture notes onto the iPad and use programs like PDF Expert or Adobe Reader or iAnnotate. As we're giving the lecture, they are putting arrows on the images. They are writing in text for them as well. So they're highlighting sections on the slides. If I was talking about this particular area and I would highlight it as I'm speaking, they would also highlight it on their iPad. Some of these apps also allow you to record, so the actual lecture could be recorded straight onto the student's iPad as well. So you've got voice recording as well as notes that you're annotating. Class environment, do you want to speak to this one, Mario?
That before shot is actually me in our anatomy laboratory at Adelaide Uni, and there's a queue of students waiting to see me because they've got questions about a specimen that's on display. Well, what I've done over the past few years is bring iPads into that anatomy lab, and the iPads have various anatomy apps loaded onto them that relate to the course. And you can see that students, rather than come to me, if there's a lot of people who are waiting to see me, they can actually, show some initiative and go to the iPad and look up the particular blood vessel or muscle or vein or whatever it is they're looking. They can use these anatomy apps to find it, to trace it, to locate it, to discuss with other students what the function of something might be. And these are just examples of a muscle app, a whole body app, and a brain app. So I just took photos of students, and we'll be showing you these apps in action soon. Now, I don't know, are we having a break right now, or...?
I think we could probably break after this slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is an app called Muscle System Pro. This company make a huge number of really high quality anatomy apps. I absolutely love all of them, and there are some that you'll be able to explore on your devices that we've provided in the next day or so. This is a virtual muscle app. Students can actually do virtual dissections, so cut away layers of tissue to look at various muscles. They can drop pins on all of the muscles virtually to actually identify the muscles. They can tap the pins to find out more information about the muscles. They can annotate images, and they can share those images via email or social media. So here we're dissecting away, looking at the deep layers of muscle. You can also search for various muscles. So I've typed in a muscle here. The app instantly brings up the muscle and shows you where it is. You can also view videos of muscles in action. So this is about to now demo a video showing abduction of the digits, which is what the student typed in that they wanted to see. And finally, this app also has some great quizzing tools. So you could set up a quiz in the app and put the iPad out in class and have students working together to try to identify muscles and answer quiz questions. We have this app on the Apple iPads that they've provided, so you'll be able to explore this app sometime today or tomorrow during the MedApp session. Before we just take a break, I just want to jump to a couple of slides which we might miss out on, because I know some of you have to go. So there are actually a lot of other tablets out there. Okay, there are Android tablets, and there is also the Microsoft Surface tablet. So some of you might be thinking at this point, well, you know, it's all good and well, you're showing us these apps, but surely, you know, I can do the same on an Android device or a Windows device. Actually, our experience is you can't. The one thing that really differentiates the iPad from those other devices isn't actually the device itself. I mean, the iPad is a beautifully made device. For me, and I think Tim as well, and many people who kind of work in this area, it's actually the apps. You know, the device is just a screen. It's the apps. And the one thing that Apple have done right, and the one thing that's drawn us to this device instead of one of the competing devices, is just the huge number of educational and medical apps out there. There's a whole category in the App Store for the iPad on medical apps, and another whole category on education apps. And here's a quote that we quite like: "There is no tablet that rivals the iPad's medical selection for healthcare professionals," and this is why it's really popular in medicine and with physicians. And this is a physician speaking here. And I just wanted to point out this here. This is a screenshot of the App Store, the page that for the company 3D4 Medical, which made that app that you just saw, Muscle System Pro. This one company has dozens and dozens of anatomy apps covering almost every single thing, whether it be teeth to the heart to, you know, skeleton, bones. There's quiz apps, and they're all really high quality apps. And this is just one of dozens and dozens of really high quality companies making exceptional apps for this device. So I think we'll have a break right now, and we'll continue showing you some of the ways students use the device. There's a few drinks and things set up in the back. Tim and I will just float around, and if you've got any questions, absolutely come and ask us. If you can stay for the final